We are going to get going. I want to welcome you this evening to the Eastern Carver County Schools first Return to Learn session. My name is Kaylee Haga. I am the Director of Communications and Community Relations for the district. I do apologize for the delay in getting started. We are recording tonight. We know that we have a lot of people that are interested, and so we were recording this and making it available, and perhaps adding some more community engagement sessions to make sure we're accommodating questions. Again, appreciate your time tonight. Some logistical pieces that I want you to know is that we will have cabinet members that are presenting the Return to Learn plan. And after which we will take questions. Many of you submitted questions in advance, and we will be working through those and the questions that you submit in the chat. And I want to acknowledge there's a whole lot of people with a whole lot of questions, and so we will probably not be able to get to all of them tonight, but we are committed to recording all of the questions that come in through the chat to make sure that we are providing answers and updates on our FAQ site on the Return to Learn website. And as I said, we will be recording this tonight's presentation to make sure that people who aren't able to join us tonight have a chance to watch and hear the same information that you do. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight our new superintendent, Lisa Sales Adams, who will get us started and underway. Lisa, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Kaylee. Like Kaylee said, this is Superintendent Lisa Sales Adams, and I'd like to welcome you to our community engagement Zoom call. And thank you for being patient. I know it took a little while to get on. I wanted to thank you, though, for spending time with us this evening as we provide additional details on our Return to Learn plan. I know that people have a lot of questions, and we have a lot of answers and a lot of information. So I hope you will find this evening very informative. So this evening, my team will share additional information on our decision-making process, the overview of our hybrid model, samples of school schedules, health and safety procedures and precautions, instructional expectations, specialized services, transportation, nutrition services, childcare, and much more. Please continue reaching out to provide feedback, ask questions, and seek clarification. We definitely need that. That helps us get the information out to you, so we appreciate that, and we want you to continue to engage in that model. But also, our schools have shared additional information, and we have dedicated time to updating our website with frequently asked questions. I encourage you to visit our website for up-to-date information and also to work with your school leaders to get individual questions and needs for your family. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent, Erin Rathke. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm glad to be here tonight with all of you to share this information. And so many of you, we're going to start out with the data and how we made the decision. And this is one of the questions that we've had a lot and want to make sure that we're responding to. We created a collaborative process and we scoured data. It was a very data-driven decision. Since last spring, we have done extensive stakeholder feedback sessions with families, teachers, and students. We have individually as a team gone through state and local guidance line by line to make sure we understand it and that we're ready to implement whatever is needed to safely support learning. We have worked with our local health organizations, pulling apart the data to better understand our local circumstances. You can see in this slide that there are 3 buckets that we're highlighting: our stakeholder feedback, which also includes our teachers, state guidance, and of course, our public health data. Currently, right now, our current data is at 17.8. And the governor put forward a framework that provided 5 scenarios. Right now, our district falls in the elementary in-person and the secondary hybrid model. That data can bounce from week to week. We are committed to looking at it as a team on a weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly basis. It's important that we look at the overall numbers and trends when considering how we start the year and how we move through each of these models. The recommendation that we put forward to the school board on Tuesday, are the following models. K-5 is going to be doing 4 days a week in person. We're calling this a modified hybrid because students are not coming back full time all 5 days. 6-8 is going to be a modified hybrid, 2 days in person and 2 days distance learning. And 9-12 is going to be starting the school year in distance learning. The entire district is going to be in distance learning on Wednesdays. Based on all the components of our data-informed decision-making process, from state guidance to health, to public health data, to staffing levels, we have landed on these models. Some things I'd like to highlight. We were committed to bring our youngest learners in person as much as possible. We know that this is developmentally appropriate for our little children, and wanting to ensure that we could meet their needs in a hybrid distance learning and in-person model, and feeling like we are able to support our K-5 students in person 4 days a week. I'm going to go through the elementary schedule more specifically. Public data supports that we have young learners back into the school building. The one distance learning day is going to allow our students and our parents to better understand technology and the nuances in the event that we need to pivot into distance learning. What we know is that we have the potential to touch each of the models throughout the school year, in person, hybrid, and distance learning. We want to ensure that our littlest learners are practicing what that could look like, and that our families are thinking about structures and systems that they may need to support our littlest learners at home. We also want to ensure that our priorities remain constant through these models: health, safety, and education. On Wednesdays, without staff and students in the building, it will allow us to do a deep clean in our elementary spaces. I want to acknowledge that does not mean we will not be deep cleaning every day. Our operations team is working very hard to ensure that we are following MDH guidelines around cleaning and sanitation. There will be a deep clean every night. However, having no children in the building certainly gives us a different opportunity from an operational standpoint. We again are committed to health, safety, and education. And so this is an in-person model, meaning 100% of our students will attend school on each of those days. What that suggests is that social distancing may not happen 100% of the time. Class sizes will remain the size they were funded at. We are taking additional precautions, such as students wearing mask coverings. We also are going to be making marks on the floor in public spaces and hallways and reception areas, so people will see what 6 feet apart looks like, so we can continue to social distance as much as possible. If students forget their masks, if something happens to their mask, we will have extra masks on hand at school. Staff and students kindergarten and up will wear masks all of the time unless an accommodation is requested with documentation from a healthcare provider. Ongoing review of transportation capacity, creating as much space as possible between riders, and regular disinfection of our buses. We are going to limit parents, volunteers, and external groups in our buildings. We're going to have sanitizers ready, available, and promoting good hygiene practices. I want to acknowledge that our littlest learners learn all of their routines and rituals in school, and masking and good hand sanitizing and hand washing will just be part of the routines and rituals that we teach our K-5 students, just like we do with lining up, sharpening your pencil. It will be really important that we teach reteach, and reinforce masking at home. If you heard Superintendent Sales Adams yesterday, she asked parents and encouraged parents to teach their littlest learners how to come to school with their mask, how to wear it, how to put it on, how to take it off, and why it's important as a community that we do this together. Our middle school schedule is going to be a block schedule. And you can see here that on Monday and Tuesday would be A students. On Monday, we would be doing period 1, 3, 5, and 7 with some support and enrichment time. And Tuesday, we would be doing 2, 4, and 6 with support and enrichment. This will help us pivot in between hybrid and distance learning if we were to have to switch between models due to our health data. Our teachers, some of our teachers, our building leaders are working really hard to ensure that we can provide excellent quality instruction within this model. We want to ensure again in this setting that we are prioritizing health, safety, and education. We are able to provide social distancing in this model. The buses and classrooms will be at 50%. Students and teachers will be wearing mask coverings. We are going to make sure that enhancements to the buildings include increased airflow and hand sanitizer stations. Schools and buses will receive extra cleaning and disinfecting. And I want to remind everybody that meals will be available for students who are not scheduled to be in person. Here's a sample of our high school schedule. And just today, we also posted a daily schedule for our high school parents and students to review. We are going to be doing a block schedule with win times. We are starting the year in distance learning for our high school students. I know that we've had lots of questions about this, and I want to spend some time sharing a little bit why we chose distance learning just to start the school year. This is not how we will finish the school year. This is how we are starting. We are going to follow a block schedule. Again, this will help us move into a hybrid model at the high school level as soon as possible. It will not be distance learning as you experienced in the spring. I want to acknowledge that we did call that distance learning because that is how we talked about it in the media and how we talked about it as teachers and as educators and as parents. However, how I define that is crisis teaching. We pivoted into an online learning environment in 2 weeks without a lot of professional development, with not a lot of heads up, but just teachers being as innovative as possible to support our students in a pandemic. However, we have learned a lot. We have time to plan. We have time to prepare professional development for our teachers and to support them. We have teachers that have learned lessons from what it was like. Students learned a lot about what it was like to be an online student. There will be opportunities for live teaching. Our technology department has worked really hard around ensuring we can do some live teaching, video conferencing. Our technology team is ensuring that there will be technical support for our students and families. And so I want to acknowledge that this is what we did in the spring, but it will not be the experience that you had in the spring. And again, I want to reiterate and be as transparent as possible. This is how we are starting. And I also want you to know we need more time at this level to ensure we can keep kids safe and we can provide quality instruction for your students. We're committed to moving into hybrid on or before October 8th. I want to share some of the other operational reasons why we chose to start in this model. There are a lot of logistical challenges that come with at the high school level. Even the pure fact that our comprehensive high schools have 1,600 students enrolled, 50% is 800 students. That is still a large gathering of students. Health officials in our one-on-one consultations shared with us that 15 to 19-year-olds have the highest exposure rate due to their social behaviors, of course. And we know that our students are gathering. We know that our students might be at graduation parties and that this social behavior does increase exposures. I also want to acknowledge we have some staffing challenges. We had reductions at the high school staffing, as well as we have 25 teachers at the high school level that are requesting accommodations due to COVID. These classes are also credit bearing, and I want to ensure that we are able to provide strong quality instruction at all levels. But when you are talking about high school students who need graduation credits and credit bearing classes, I want to ensure that we can provide quality instruction. The hybrid model is challenging for our teachers, and I want to ensure that our building leaders, our instructional coaches, and our teaching and learning team can put our arms around our teachers and ensure that they can provide quality instruction for our high school students. So again, I want to just acknowledge this is how we're starting. I want to be as transparent as possible why we chose this decision. And I want to again reiterate that we're committed to opening up into a hybrid model on or before October 8th. And together, our district team is going to work alongside our teachers and administrators to ensure that we have a responsive and workable plan to get our students back in the building as soon as possible. Things to consider and instructional expectations that we have during these learning models. Every platform, even in person, is going to be framed in the Google Classroom platform, because due to how the 5 scenarios that have been put forward to us by MDE and MDH, we have to be able to pivot maybe even within 24 hours. I want to acknowledge that pivoting in between models could be at the classroom level, it could be at a grade level, it could be at a building, and it could be a district level. And so to ensure that we can maintain quality, consistent instruction, the Google platform will help us do that. There will be synchronous and asynchronous lessons provided for our students in hybrid and distance learning. I also want to say you're hearing those words and you're seeing them written, and that I want to acknowledge that's really educational terminology. Synchronous and asynchronous means that we will have live teachers where students will be able to interact with teachers as well as with each other. Great learning is not teachers giving kids information, but our peer-to-peer interaction will be really important for our teachers, for our students to get high quality instruction and gain knowledge from one another as well. And so we are working really hard to ensure that both of those things will happen throughout a lesson in a hybrid and distance learning model. We know that every opportunity that we can to have in-person instruction is going to add value, not only for teachers, but for students. Because I want to acknowledge building relationships and the social emotional health of our students is still a very high priority for us. And so building relationships in a distance learning and hybrid model, although can be challenging, is still a priority and can be done. And providing instructional strategies for our teachers to be able to do that is a high priority for us. We're working really hard to ensure that we've got the best research, that we've read the most, that we've learned the most, and that we've thought through how to be effective instructors in each of these models. I want to acknowledge that our teachers have never taught in a hybrid model. I've never taught in a hybrid model. And so we are going to continue to learn as we go, but we are sure that we are providing some high quality structures and consistency in place for our teachers and students and families to be successful. We spent a lot of time reviewing the family engagement feedback that we got in the spring of things that families really wanted to see the next time, or if we remained in some of these models. And some of that was consistency, structure, routine, live teaching, and those things are structures and systems that we're committed to providing for our families and our students. We also know that there are lots of questions about our ECCS Online Learning Academy. All of our families have an option to opt into an online-only academy. What this means is that families will not pivot in and out of any of the models from the time they commit till the end of the first semester. We are asking families to enroll early and to commit for the semester. I want to acknowledge that this is a model that people have a lot of questions about, and I want to ensure that we're informing our community as much as possible around this model. I know that there is a brand new flyer or link on our website that has been added that you can learn more about our ECCS Online Learning Academy. Again, as we are saying in all of the other models, Google Classroom will be our platform. We will be providing live teaching, synchronous and asynchronous lessons. There will be office hours by teachers. There will be licensed teachers teaching classes. Classes will be taught by District 112 teachers. You will still be enrolled in your home school. So if you are a Chaska High School student, you are still enrolled at Chaska High School. You may be taught by teachers across the district. We are working hard to ensure that our students will have excellent staff in front of them, that staff will have more training and will be prepared to provide lessons for 5 days a week distance learning. There will be a schedule, there will be regular office hours, and we will provide support and technical support for our families and our students. We will still have a high priority of relationships and building community within this online platform. There will be daily virtual check-ins to ensure students are not only getting social emotional support as well as academic support. There will be recorded lessons, tutorials, and independent work within this model. We want to ensure that the culture of learning, personalized learning, and the tradition of excellence in Eastern Carver County is maintained within this model. On the flyer that's on the website, you will see a sample of an elementary, middle, and high school student. And so I encourage you to look there for some more information. And there's also some question and answer on the end of the flyer. Thank you. I'm passing it off to Laura.
Aaron, I might have you take that one.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I want to highlight our students with specialized services. We are thinking about them. We want to ensure that they have a quality experience in each of these models. Our director of specialized education is working very hard with their special education administration to ensure that we're supporting all of our students and ensuring that their IEPs and their goals are being followed. We are working alongside families and IEP teams to ensure that we can provide their goals within each of these models. That will also include our related services and also their general education classes. And so we are working really closely with our families and our IEP teams. We want to have consistency in each of the learning plans. We are working on parent engagement. Right now, there will be some specific family engagement for our students and families who are receiving specialized services. And so I just want to highlight that Tuesday the 18th at 10:30 and Wednesday the 19th at 6:30 is an opportunity to ask specific questions regarding this, regarding students on IEPs and on 504 plans.
Good evening. I'm Dee Dee Caring. I'm the Finance and Operations Director. I just want to talk a little bit about building health and safety. First of all, as mentioned earlier, face coverings, as mandated by the governor, will be worn by all staff and students. As we mentioned, accommodations will be made as needed for some of our staff and students. Some masks will be provided to staff, and additional masks will be available for those who forget or if they're lost or broken, for students that might need those. Every classroom in the district was evaluated by a third-party testing agency in February of 2020. The Institute of Environmental Assessment measured all classrooms while school was in session with children fully occupying the rooms, measuring for relative humidity, temperature, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide levels. The amount of carbon dioxide, or CO2, present in the air is a good indicator of ample fresh air. Some of our newest buildings actually use CO2 levels to control the amount of fresh air that enters the building through the automation system. The testing completed in February indicates the average amount of CO2 in our buildings is far less than the target of 1,200 parts per million, meaning that the airflow into our school is very good. Hand sanitization stations will also be set up through the buildings. I know many of you have questions about the cleaning process. So throughout the day, we will be conducting frequently cleaning of touch points throughout the buildings and sanitizing them. This includes door handles, handrails, light switches, elevator call buttons, toilet and sink handles, etc. In the evening, classrooms and service counters, tables and chairs in common areas will be disinfectant. Where school will not be held for an entire day, such as Wednesdays at the elementary school, we will perform a deep clean on all commons areas and classrooms. Cleaning kits will be available in all schools, and we anticipate getting 1 kit per classroom. Those kits will include a carrying case, gloves, disinfectant, hand sanitizer, and paper towels. Signage similar to what you've seen in the stores or other public places will be in our buildings, including hallways, restrooms, and entrances. We have purchased plexiglass barriers, which will be both portable and permanent in nature. So for instance, in our main reception areas, we will have plexiglass up to protect both the student and the staff. Moving on to the transportation. So routes were set up for all in classroom scenario that would naturally reduce the passenger loads to meet the Minnesota Department of Ed guidance in the hybrid scenario without causing major changes, confusion, and disruptions. Adjusting standard procedures to control adequate passenger count to meet the Department of Education guidance, including limiting alternative address requests, not permitting extra riders, and limiting route changes to twice monthly. Routes will be designated to operate in a transit model for each school. This means that drivers will run the same route every day, no matter what the hybrid group goes to that school day. Bus stops and times will remain the same, and it is understood there may be days when there is not a rider at a bus stop. Ridership will be monitored regularly with plans to make adjustment where needed and the next scheduled route change date. Related to safety protocols for transportation, all drivers will be required to wear a mask. Drivers will complete a health screening checklist each day before embarking on a route. As required by the Department of Education, the passenger seat behind the driver will remain empty to maintain approximately 6 feet between the driver and passengers. Windows and roof vents will be open when weather permits to increase fresh airflow, and buses will be cleaned between each run. Buses will be cleaned at the end of the day using an electrostatic sprayer and approved chemicals. Students will be encouraged to load the bus from the back to the front during the morning routes in order to minimize passenger contact. So next, moving on to the slide on the bell times, as you noted, probably in some of the communications you've seen or online, we need to adjust the bell times for earlier or later to maximize current route fleet and driver supply. Additionally, a change in bell times will provide extra time at schools for staggered loading and unloading procedures, additional parent traffic issues, and bus cleaning procedures. Next, when we look at our nutrition services, students at Eastern Carver County will have multiple ways to access meal this fall, depending on their grade level and learning model choice. On days when your student is learning in their school building, they will visit our kitchens and cafeterias as they have in the previous years, but with extra safety precautions and physical distance measures in place. To access meals, elementary schools, a one-day meal kit will be provided as an opportunity for kids to take home on Tuesday to be consumed while in distance learning on Wednesday. The meal kit will contain one breakfast, one lunch, and include student favorites such as ravioli dippers, walking tacos, and homemade omelet bites. Meal kits would be charged to your student's meal account or are free of charge if your student is qualified for free or reduced meals. Similarly to the elementary, middle school students will have an opportunity to get a meal kit, but this will be for 3 days, and they will get that kit on the last day of their in-person learning before their 3 days of distance learning. At the high school, with the distance learning to begin with, 5-day learning kits, meal kits will be available. Students who choose to attend the online Learning Academy will be able to pick up a 5-day meal kit from your school building that your student goes to. Additionally, an alternate option is a daily meal pickup. This would be for all students K-12 can pick up daily meals at Cheska Middle School East and Chanhassen High School on any day there is a distance learning. The times and the dates and locations will be posted on the website. We want you to know that we also greatly take into consideration the food safety and sanitation all the time, but this is even higher priority this year. In addition to the stringent measures, school nutrition staff have instituted some additional safety measures to keep both staff and students safe. Again, all staff will be wearing masks, gloves, and face shields when the tasks allow during the prep and service of meals. Plexiglass or barriers are in place on all serving lines, and points of sales will be contactless at the point of sale. We will have floor markers to assure 6-foot distancing, and food items will be single served or served to them to allow communal serving utensils. Next, I'm going to turn it off to my colleague, Jackie Johnston, to talk about childcare.
Good evening. I'm Jackie Johnston, and I'm the Director of Community Education. And I'm delighted to share with you about our childcare program for this fall. We will be programming for children. This governor has required that we provide essential workers, Tier 1 essential workers, free childcare during the hours that their children would typically be in school. So this slide shows you that we will be providing care for those students, who those students are as far as they qualify. And then we will also be providing care for our currently registered childcare families with space and staffing allowing. So we're working with our principals, our building principals, to be able to provide care before and after school, and with our buildings and grounds people and our HR people to help us provide the staffing for that. So our order of registrations would be district staff who have children that attend Eastern Carver County Schools is our first priority. Currently enrolled fall club care families who are also Tier 1. Tier 1 families with K-5 children needing care. And then currently enrolled fall club care families who are not Tier 1. Then as we look at what that will look like, knowing that K-5 is going back in a 4-day model, we will have registrations for before and after school, and then the in-person school day would be a separate registration. Wednesday would also be a separate registration, as that would be a distance learning on-site childcare day. Again, Tier 1 workers would have to pay a fee for the before and after school, but during the school day would be free. And Wednesdays would be free for Tier 1 workers, and also would be fee-based for non-Tier 1 workers. Moving on to our early childhood programs. We will be running our early childhood programs pretty much like normal because of some of the changes in the language. We are able to have our youngest learners come to school, and parents are already registered, so there'll be no changes to those classes that they are already registered for. They are going to be 5 days a week. We will follow all the MDH guidelines, which include, as you've heard over and over tonight, the cleaning, hand washing, limiting classroom exposures, and those requirements. And now I will turn it over to Tara Cliff.
Hi, thank you very much. So we've been asked about health monitoring, and so we are going to educate our parents and families and staff and students about the signs and symptoms of COVID-19. The families will be asked to check their students for signs of illness before sending them to school and check their temperatures. We are going to be really diligent about keeping kids home when they're ill this year. So we will probably be sending more kids home than we typically would for minor colds, because unfortunately, COVID-19 mimics a lot of other illnesses like colds and flu and allergies. And so we just unfortunately don't know what is COVID versus the other. And so we're going to take every precaution and send kids home who are ill. And students who develop symptoms when they're at school would be isolated into a designated space until they can be picked up. And they would be wearing a surgical mask to keep them isolated and safe from other people in the building. So I want to talk about what happens if we have a positive case in our schools. The building nurse would be notified either by the parent or if we hear from public health. So in either case, the building nurse will be notified. And this may result in quarantining of the classroom, or it might be a cluster or the whole building. It would really depend on the circumstances and our collaboration with public health. We take our direction through them and through the Minnesota Department of Education when we're working with quarantining and isolation of our students in classrooms. But anyone with a positive test must stay home and isolate for 10 days. They should have improved symptoms and be fever-free for 24 hours. And their household contacts will also need to stay home and watch for symptoms for 14 days as well. So those notifications to families will be determined in collaboration with public health as well. Then we're going to talk about if kids or students and staff are symptomatic. So anyone who has symptoms of illness should stay home, or if they're already at school, be evaluated by the building nurse. And we're going to, ask all the questions we typically do for COVID symptoms or other illness symptoms. The student would be isolated from other well students and sent home. And then we will encourage them to follow up with their healthcare provider to figure out, is it COVID? Is it another illness such as strep? If they were to have another diagnosis, like strep or allergies, or it's their asthma flaring up, or whatever it is, then we would ask for a doctor documentation saying it's an alternate diagnosis, and then we would follow the normal exclusion policy for that particular illness. But the case investigation would be going through the building nurse and Carver County and depending on the circumstances, we would be sending out notifications. If it's a COVID suspected case and it's not due to another illness, the symptomatic person would have to stay home for 10 days from the onset of symptoms, and they need to be fever-free for 24 hours, and their symptoms should be improved. And then the last scenario is if they are a contact of a person who is positive or symptomatic. Again, the building nurses will be the primary contact person in the building. The person should be staying home for 14 days to watch for symptoms from the last day of the contact of the person who was ill. So if they were around a cousin, for instance, on the weekend, and the cousin turned out to have COVID, then it would be 14 days of watching for symptoms from that day that they were last with their cousin. So if symptoms develop or if the child tests positive, then we would follow that flow chart for positive in that case. So any quarantine and isolation, again, is developed in partnership with local public health and Minnesota Department of Health. Thank you.
Many of you have questions about transitioning between models. And I want to acknowledge that this is going to be part of our school year this year. This is going to impact our school community. We're going to have to ensure that we're taking care of our staff, that we are monitoring, tracing, and isolation, and extracurricular activities. We want you to know that the numbers are ever changing, and balancing stability and health and safety is critically important. We are committed to communicating to our community and to our families as far in advance as we possibly can if the district would pivot into a different model. But again, I want to remind you, as Tara Cliff said, we could be quarantining a cluster, a class, a grade level, a school, or the district. I imagine that in a quarantine situation with a positive case that we would have to pivot that group in 24 hours or less. And so we would maybe pivot a 6th grade class, for example, and put them into distance learning because of COVID exposures and trace back to that situation in consultation with Tara Cliff and the Minnesota Department of Health. We are committed to monitoring our health data. We are committed to talking to Carver County health officials. We're committed to reevaluating our model on a monthly basis. We are being as transparent as possible of reevaluation dates. And again, I want to acknowledge that our high school is starting in distance learning, and we are committed, based on the data, to get students back in place on or before October 8th.
Thank you, Erin and team. At this time, I just want to share and thank you for taking the time to be with us. As a district community, we are all invested in our children. Whether you are a parent, a grandparent, a student, or a community member, whether you live in Carver or Victoria, Chanhassen, or Chaska, we all want our children to succeed. We know the best place for them to grow and learn is in school, face-to-face, and with their teachers. Our teachers do miss their students. And I actually want an opportunity to meet our students, to meet them, to get into our schools. There's nothing we want more as a community, and in order for that to happen, we will all have to work together. We need to mask up and social distance when we can, and do all we can to minimize exposure so we can turn the dial toward full in-person. That's what we want. We want school business as usual. We know that this pandemic is uncertain and it's unpredictable, but we want school as usual, but we want to make sure that it's safe. We can do it. We are stronger together, but it will take all of us as a team to get all of our learners back in school. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Kaylee to open up for our question and answer session. And thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Sales Adams, and thank you to our cabinet members for the presentation tonight. There's a ton of questions coming into the chat. There's a lot of questions that came in online. Again, I want to reiterate that we're going to grab all of these, we're going to log them, and we're going to turn answers around. So if we don't get to your question tonight, please know that we take all of these questions very seriously, and we know that you guys want answers to be able to make the best possible decisions for your families. So I guess the first question is one that's sensitive to a lot of families. And I'm going to ask Tara Cliff to answer this one, especially thinking about the elementary model where kids might be eating lunch in their classrooms, or in the middle school model. What are we doing to make sure that we're protecting our kids with food allergies?
Well, that is a great question. And so we, Kim Franta, who's the Nutrition Services Director, and I have been in a lot of conversation about this. It's difficult because we need to have kids eating in their classrooms. Because of COVID and because of social distancing, we're going to work with our principals to determine some alternate spacing so that students can remain safe while at school and try to have the best environment that we can for them. I know not everything will be ideal as far as, we don't want to pull kids out and have them look different than their peers. That is not our intent. And unfortunately, there might have to be some of that just in this case so that we can keep them safe while at school.
I got a couple more questions for you. I'll keep you unmuted.
Sure.
Can you speak to what level of data is the county able to share with us? So like, case counts by school, case counts by district, what is able to be shared with parents?
Well, the county has a dashboard that's open to everybody on the Carver County Public Health website. And under the dashboard, they have some additional data so you can kind of dig a little bit deeper, but there's lots of graphs in there about cumulative cases within our county. They go even deeper and do a 7-day trend. They have I think they have them broken down by ages and ethnicities and other data points as well. So they do have a pretty comprehensive dashboard.
Perfect, thank you. And then one more question. When we talk about keeping kids home when they're ill, does that mean that we're going to get more excused absences due to common cold, sniffles? What should parents do if they aren't sure, given the symptoms, whether their child should be in school or not? Do you have any guidance for parents around that?
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult one because, kids are going to get sick with, everything under the sun, common cold and everything. We just really need to be diligent about keeping our kids home who are sick because we just don't know what it is. If you have any doubts, you can definitely reach out to your building nurse to kind of talk things through and we can help you go through that process. You can always contact your healthcare provider and ask more questions there. We're here to partner with you. But in reality, as much as we can keep ill children home, that's going to be our best this year.
Perfect, thanks. And for folks that are watching now or watching later, we will put a link to that Carver County COVID dashboard on our website so folks can find that easily. And one of the things that we also discussed at the board meeting with our board members was kind of a dash in terms of where we are in the learning model, what the caseloads are telling us so that parents can easily track what the MDH reporting is saying and how our district is trending. So we will try to keep our parents as informed of that changing data as much as we can. I am going to turn to Erin. Erin, with regards to the Online Learning Academy, can you talk about, we have a whole lot of courses at the high school level. If kids are in advanced classes and they need to be in the Online Learning Academy for whatever reason, how are we going to accommodate them with all of those various pieces?
We're committed to having a licensed quality teacher in front of all of our students. It may mean that they are enrolled at a high school with students who are learning in person and online, and maybe they will have a full 5-day online experience, but some of the students in their class may be in person. We're committed to providing a quality instruction for all classes for our high school students in the online academy.
Great, thank you. I'm going to keep you in the hot seat for a little while longer. So here's a question. In terms of high school sports, I know that this is both athletics and activities are a concern for a lot of our parents. It's an important part of the school experience for kids at really every level. What will the amount of sports activities, practices be reduced considering students aren't in school? How are we going to handle that?
This is such a challenging question, and I know for many of you out there, this was almost harder than the learning models. Our students are committed, our athletes are committed, as well as our activities. And so I've been working alongside our athletic directors and our activity directors, and they are eagerly trying to provide a safe environment for our athletes and for our activities. So we are following Minnesota State High School League rules right now. And so there are two things happening. So there is also a document that you can find online that's called Youth Ready to Play, and youth sports is happening. And so there's a lot of conversation about that because it is different than what the Minnesota State High School League came out with. So right now they labeled sports as high impact or low impact. And so our high impact our high impact sports such as football and volleyball and our inside things got canceled. And I say canceled, meaning they got moved to the spring. And so they're doing a skinny season and a spring season that's going to go into July for those sports, volleyball and football in particular. However, soccer is still going, and that is because it is outside. And so we are following Minnesota State High School League rules, and we are wanting to provide also for our activities a virtual experience that is rich as possible. I know our athletic director, our activities director is working really hard alongside so that our students can still in a virtual world experience as much belonging and experience extracurricular activities, which are some of our kids' favorite things in high school. And we want to ensure that we can provide them, but also provide them safely and falling within the guidelines that we are given through the Minnesota State High School League. There's still some questions that we have about practicing and what the Minnesota State High School League is saying around that, and also around youth sports and our feeder programs that feed into the high school level. And there's still a lot of controversy and questions about that. However, we continue to comb those guidelines as well and ensure that our students are as safe as possible, that they're working in pods of 25 or less if they are participating. Certainly there's some things that we're talking about with excursion with masks and what we have to have athletes do with masks. And so our ADs are working really hard at that. When people do use our facilities, we do have them fill out a COVID planning template where they're planning safe activities, ensuring that there's pods, that coaches are wearing masks. And so we're following those guidelines as well. So we continue to want to provide a holistic experience for our high school students within the guidelines that we're given within this health pandemic.
Can you talk about what that Wednesday distance learning day will look like for all of our students, no matter what model that they're in?
So we are still ironing out the details of Wednesday because we want to participate with teachers, because this is a day that is going to be very significant for them around planning and collaborating and supporting our children that may have some challenges within some of these models and be able to provide support for them. And we also want to provide a quality online experience for all of our kids on Wednesday. And so things that you can anticipate is teachers doing a synchronous welcome and getting kids started. And also there will be independent work and synchronous work happening in that class. It is not a non-learning day. It is a learning day online. And this will help our students who are in person and in hybrid practice and be able to get back the next day with a teacher and say, I really had a hard time with that. Also, we're, again, like I said earlier, every in-person opportunity we have with kids is really important. And so part of what our teachers are going to want to do is help our students get ready on the Google Classroom platform so that if we were to pivot into distance learning, our students have more skill sets in Google Classroom than they did in the spring. There was one other thing I wanted to share that I didn't. Oh, I want to say this. In high school, one of the things we are starting in distance learning, but I did not say out loud that we are going to work very diligently for our ninth graders. We want to provide some opportunities for them to get into the building in small groups. We know that those transition years, ninth grade, sixth grade, kindergarten, are really important and they're pivotal in our kids' learning experience. And so we want to, our building administrators are working on that. We also want to provide some small group access to the building for labs, win time, intervention, students that need to be pulled in small groups. And as you know, many of the questions that you have around high school are those classes that are really hard to do online, like shop. And so we're going to be working alongside our teachers to figure out how we can get small groups in to participate with some materials. And so again, we are so committed to that hybrid model and getting to it as soon as possible at the high school level. And so I believe we won't have to work on that for very long. However, I do want to acknowledge that we will have those buildings will not stay empty. We'll have small groups of students in as needed.
Thank you. How will a student learn if they have to quarantine but their class doesn't?
So that is a great question. And I was hoping that you'd ask me because I wanted to jump in when Tara was saying that, because Tara is addressing the health concerns that people have and how we need to handle it from a safety and health perspective. And just like we keep saying, our priorities are health, safety, and education. And so Tara addressed that around quarantining. And that is why the Google Classroom platform will be so important, so that if we do have kids that are healthy at home but need to be quarantined based on the Minnesota Department of Health, they will still have access to instruction through Google Classroom. And our teachers, we're going to work alongside our teachers. And I want to just acknowledge this is not simple, but we're going to work alongside our teachers to ensure that we can provide in-person and online instruction 5 days a week for kids so that they can have access as much as possible, even if they are quarantining, because they might have a secondary exposure and they're feeling fine, but they have to stay home. And we want to provide consistent quality education as much as we possibly can.
Great. Let's talk about masks. Masks are hard. I have an elementary schooler. It's hard. What are we going to do to help support our younger learners, especially in terms of making sure that they're keeping those masks on during the day?
Yes, I have a daughter who, when she wears her mask, tells me she has a headache every time she wears it. So you probably, parents, are experiencing that at home too, and trying to talk your child into this is what we have to do for ourselves and for one another. So I want to just acknowledge that I did read some of the questions today where people are saying, is my child going to get kicked out of class? Is my child going to, get kicked out of school? And I just want to acknowledge that this is just like any other routine and ritual we teach kids. This is what teachers do. We are skilled at doing this. This is how we teach, reteach, and reinforce behaviors that we want to have happen within the structures of school. Some students get it the first time, and some students need some reteaching. And one of the things I shared today with our deans and our administrators is when students don't want to do something, we have to get to the root of why. And we want to ask, maybe their mask is uncomfortable. And we've got to ask enough questions of our kids to figure out the why so that we can overcome that barrier. But if we never ask what the barrier is, we don't know how to overcome it with kids. I believe kids want to do what we ask them to do. We just got to help them be able to do that. And I thought Superintendent Sales Adams did an amazing job yesterday when she said, one of the things you can do is help your child at home. I was a middle school principal, and when parents would come on tours and say, what can I do to help my kid get ready for middle school? I'd say, teach them how to do a padlock. That is the worst thing, is to watch a sixth grader in the hallway trying to get their locker open and the padlock off in passing time and be so worried about being tardy. And so they're shaking and trying to get it. And the more nervous they are, they forget to skip this middle number. And so that's what I tell parents, teach them how to use a padlock. And I know I had a middle schooler who's not in middle school anymore. And we taught him how to use padlock, and he came home and he said, Mom, I'm so glad you showed me how to do that, because he wasn't panicked during passing time. Masks are the same thing. We just have to help our kids know this is what they're going to have to do when they come to school. And how do we help them at home, teach them, reteach them, show them, model it, and have them practicing. And you know, at home in the summer, it's easy to get out of those routines and rituals, but I'm doing the same thing with my kids at home. We're practicing. They have to wear their mask, and they have to keep it over their nose, right? Like I'm telling them, get it over your nose. So we just need our community to help us so that our kids know the expectation. But we're going to work really hard. We want students to be safe, and we want teachers to be safe. And the way that we do that is to stay masked. And so we're gonna enforce it, but I mean that in a kid-friendly way. We got to teach them how to do it.
Great answer. Thank you. That's great advice. A couple technology questions. Will kindergarten students be getting Chromebooks? What is our ratio?
Hey, I'm really excited to report out on that. This is a highlight for me. So last year we were 1-to-1 first grade through 12th grade. This year we have worked really hard. We are harvesting some devices, and our kindergarten will be a 1-to-1 with Chromebooks. And I'm really excited about that because that is going to give our students better access, our families better access. We've also done a lot of internet upgrading. Last year we were scrambling. I mean, that's just the truth. Every district across the state was scrambling, trying to ensure that people had the technology that they needed, that they had the internet that they needed. And I believe Eastern Carver County was really creative with how they did that, whether it was taking internets out of buses, internet devices out of buses and putting it in communities that needed more internet. And we were able to get pucks. We have extra internet pucks for students, and our students will be 1-to-1 Chromebooks K-12.
That's great. Thank you. I apologize. You're in the hot seat. We're going to keep you here for a little bit longer. So we've got a lot of questions about A and B groups, and how are we deciding the grouping? Is it just the middle schoolers that are going to get that? Who's gonna be assigned an A group and a B group, and when will they know, and how will we make those assignments?
Everybody, that's a great question. And I know people are really eager about this because they're starting to plan. And we are going to be assigning every student in the district an A and B. And even if you're starting in person, even if you're in distance learning, you're going to get an assignment of an A to B, so that if we transition in and out of models, you already know what you are prior to that happening. They will come out August 25th. That is our commitment. Craig Larson, our technology guru, is working on those assignments, and it is going to be based on numbers. We have to ensure, because one of the questions I know that's out there is a lot about how are we providing safety in classrooms, and the spacing in rooms. And so our principals have maps of their classrooms that have 50% capacity based on square footage. And so we have to think about that at each grade level. We have to look at the district as a whole. We have to look at grade bands. We have to look at it at schools. And so that's how we're assigning those A and Bs. It's a lot of districts are coming out and saying it's alpha, like the beginning of the alphabet is A and the end of the alphabet is B. That's not how we're doing it. We're really being thoughtful to ensure that we can provide that 50% hybrid model. And so it's going to take us a little bit to do it, and to do it thoughtfully, and not just be flippant about assigning it. If you're an A, you're an A. If your last name starts with B, now you're an A. We want to be thoughtful about it, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So August 25th, and I know some people are asking, can I request? We're asking that people not make requests at this time. It's very hard. I don't want to promise and then can't fulfill it. And so we're just asking that people not make requests at this time. I'm trying to think, is there anything else, Kaylee, that I can highlight about that?
I think that's pretty comprehensive. I appreciate that. A couple more questions about Online Academy, and I know we just pushed out a lot more information today on that. So if you haven't seen our website, I would encourage folks to go and take a look. A couple of questions around our kindergartners. Will online, if parents have Online Academy as their choice for their youngest learners, will that be developmentally appropriate? Are we going to expect kindergartners to sit in front of a screen all day? What's that going to look like?
That's a great question. That will be really, I want to acknowledge that I am excited about our kindergartners going 1-to-1, but one of the reasons that Eastern Carver County didn't do that was not because we couldn't, but because we had a philosophical belief that our little kindergartners did not need to have so much screen time. And I know parents are thinking about that. I'm thinking about that all the time. What's too much screen time? And what was the increase of screen time with school online, plus all of the other things that our kids do on screens? And so I'm thinking about that. I know you're thinking about that too. None of our kids developmentally can be online live 6.5 hours a day. It is just, you all know, those of you that are doing Zoom meetings and increased your online meetings, it's tiring, it's hard on our eyes. And so it will be in chunks. We will be live, help get kids get started. They might have to do some independent work. Then we'll do some checking in with them. We may be available for some office hours. We may be live chatting and talking with students and helping them redirect. Our kindergartners, I want to tell you, I was not a kindergarten teacher, but our kindergarten teachers are the content masters for that age. And so they'll work alongside us to ensure that we're developmentally appropriate for online learning, but it will not be live the whole time. It'll be in chunks.
Can we talk a little bit about class size at the elementary school? You talked about as funded, and that's kind of insider baseball for parents. That's very much a teacher administrator term. What can folks expect for class sizes at the elementary school? I know you said that in person means in person, and so while we will work to socially distance as much as possible, that is not the same as a hybrid model where it is 50%, and we do specifically maintain a 6-foot distance between kids. What can folks expect for class sizes at the elementary? Do we have any guesses right now?
In our elementary schools or on the online academy? I want to just clarify.
In person.
You know, I wonder if Joan, one of our principals, would be someone who could answer this really from boots on the ground in our elementary school and just maybe talk about class sizes and how they were funded.
Let's see if Joan is still with us. We've had kind of folks moving in and out. So Joan, are you out there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello. All right, class sizes. We have ranges of what we try to maintain at each grade level. And with our referendum not passing last year, those numbers went up a bit, as we knew they would. What we try to do is really look at the range of 20 to 22. And if you look that we said we'd add about 1.5 kids to that number, we could be as high as 23 or around that. I think what is making it difficult for us to say for sure is we don't know how many of those kindergarten students may decide to go to the online academy. At first grade, we try to stay in that range of about 24, roughly in that area. But if you look at a 2-student increase, given the referendum didn't pass, we could be as high as around 26. Again, we might have a number of students in online academy, and so that would come down. When you get up to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, those numbers can get larger. In the past, what we've tried to do is stay anywhere between 26 and 28. This year, we're not quite sure what that will look like because, again, online academy and other choices could affect it. I think that my impression that the impression I've been given is that we will get together, see how many students are online, how many are left in each of our buildings, and then we will recreate or reassign students so that we have great class sizes that will allow the teachers to work with those students.
Thank you so much, Joan.
You're welcome.
I've got a couple questions for Jackie about childcare. So Jackie, unmute yourself and come on up. I have a question from somebody. If they were registered in the spring, if they were accepted for club care registration in the spring, are they still registered for club care in the fall?
So yes, maybe. So as I talked about earlier, we'll have a priority list. We have to prioritize tier 1. So if you are a current club care family and you are a tier 1, you are first priority. If you're a district teacher, you're even first priority. But then we are going to be sending out at the end of this week, early next week, a registration confirmation to our families in club care who registered last spring to see if they still need care and when they need it. And then we're going to look at our staffing in our space, and then we'll get back to everybody as quickly as we can. We know people are anxious about this, and as a grandmother, I understand that. So we will expedite that as fast as we can, but there are a lot of variables, and one is how much space we have, and the other is our staffing capacity. But we will be getting back to you by the end of this week or early next week, and you can confirm with us if you still need care.
All right. And then for our elementary students, who will be providing care on that Wednesday for our Tier 1 workers? Will they be assisting with the virtual learning? What will that look like? What will that space look like?
So on the Wednesday, there will be care will be provided by paras from the district. And then, yes, all of our children will receive support for distance learning during the time that they are in their care program.
Okay, fantastic. I have got a question for Laura Pingree-Kyle, who's our Director of Specialized Services. So give Laura a second to come forward. But we have had a number of folks who are concerned about their kids with IEPs who maybe struggled in the spring. What are we doing to support our folks, knowing that we're starting the year in 3 different models and maybe moving between those models? And then what kind of supports would exist for those families if they choose that online learning model?
Great question. Thank you, Kaylee. We have what is called a CLP this year, which will be embedded into the IEP. It's a portion of that IEP, and it's going to be addressing all 3 different models. And our IEP teams will be inviting parents in as early as possible, as soon as school starts, to have a team dialogue and discussion on what special education services and related services will look like in all 3 models. That will be an amended IEP. And once we have consent from parents on that plan, that will be implemented ASAP. And in case the district or that building needs to pivot quickly between different models, that IEP will be ready to go between that. And we acknowledge that this is really difficult for students with disabilities, and that we are dedicated to be working in conjunction and partnering with all of our parents and our students to be successful and to make successful plans. It's hard, but I believe that we can do this together. There are a variety of ways that we can modify plans. The base model is what the district is indicating for the different levels, but there are a variety of things when we look at a student's individual disability and educational needs, different things that we can do to modify that plan for each student. And we look forward to doing that with each team member and team.
Thank you, Laura. Dee Dee, come on down.
You're the next contestant.
You're the next contestant. Are we renting our facilities to outside groups, and what is our policy in terms of making sure that they're keeping our buildings safe if we're letting them use it?
Sure, that's a great question. We have been renting out our facilities, as I believe it was Aaron mentioned earlier. We do have protocol, and we're following the Department of Health and CDC guidelines for that. So for instance, outside football, outside practices were being held this summer, but they were done in a manner where they were pods of children with a coach. So we made sure we had the proper number of students, and they had to be in different areas, same number of kids every day, etc. So, but we will continue to monitor the use of our facilities and go along with things that we learned from the Department of Health, from public health, as well as just looking how it matches up maybe with the Minnesota State High School League. Certainly, we know that students at different levels have different social interactions, and so that causes more concern and some more risk. But we haven't had as much demand, and we have been monitoring and reviewing it. We have a team that reviews the requests for facility use. So long story short, we'll continue to monitor, continue to see if it makes sense. Certainly if we have any type of an outbreak in a school, we'll look at that school, change plans with that. Outdoor is much different than indoor activities as well.
Can you talk a little about ventilation and our
Sure.
HVAC and airflow?
Sure.
I know that's a concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we did have all of our buildings tested, and we didn't do it now because there's nobody in school. So you do the testing when there's students in the building, and when you have a fully occupied building. So we hired a company called IEA that came in and monitored all of that. And as I mentioned earlier, the lower your CO2 level in your buildings means that you have more airflow. The more airflow you have, we know that that pulls any particles out of our buildings. So all of our buildings have been tested. We'll continue to monitor that. We will continue to run our air systems at the highest level as possible to keep that air circulating. In areas where we do have windows, if it's, the climate is conducive to it, we will keep windows open and then keep those ventilation systems going. They'll be monitored, checked, and rechecked to make sure. So we had one school that we needed to look at a remedy because it's an older school. We found a remedy for it, and we'll continue to monitor that. As another note, we know that we have some individuals that are concerned about it that are on our staff. So we're also setting up some interactive meeting with our IEA consultant to just go over what those, how it works and try to reassure people that we are doing everything that we possibly can.
Thanks, Dee Dee.
You're welcome.
Laura, I have another question for you really quickly. We're getting close to running out of time. I'm going to try to sneak a few more questions in because I know we did get started late. Will parents of children on an IEP be allowed to participate in those contingency learning plan discussions and decisions? How will they be engaged?
Definitely. Oh, thanks for the question. Definitely. It will be a full IEP team process, which that parent voice and input as a team member, as well as a student, is critical to that discussion and agreement. In addition, it will be, again, embedded into that IEP, and so will not be implemented until the parent or the student, if they're 18 or above, provides written consent or 14 days elapse. That parent participation, the student participation is core to that process and to it being successful.
All right, thank you so much. Jackie, you're back on deck. 3 days a week is considered a full time for club care. Will that still be the case given Wednesdays are distance learning?
So parents will have the option of signing up for before and after school all 5 days a week. But yes, 3 days a week, if they would have to include that Wednesday to be full time.
Okay, great. Erin, a couple more questions for you. We'll sneak in a few more questions for Erin. So I had I know the answer, but I'm gonna have you answer it. There was one thing we missed on the AABB discussion. Are we gonna try to keep families together as a unit on that schedule?
I knew that there was one thing I forgot to say. Yes, we have a priority. It is our priority that we keep siblings on the same day. And so that is one of the factors that we're considering when we're assigning these, that we want to keep that as our number one priority.
Perfect. All right. Another question in terms of La Academia. If people are enrolled in the online academy, will we have Spanish immersion options available for that family group as well?
Thank you. That's a great question and really important to us and certainly important to our principal, Gretchen. And we've been working with her and talking about how we can provide that as best as we can in a distance learning model. And we do believe that we will have a staff that will be able to do that for us.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna bring Jackie back. The questions are still popping in. I'm trying to flip in between. There's a lot. And we, like, as I said before, we will be pulling all of these out of the chat and we will be going through them and getting answers back for folks. Will care for Tier 1 students on a distance day, Wednesday for elementary, be at their school, or will we need to drive them to another location?
So our plan currently is the care for Tier 1 students would be at their school.
Okay.
Our distance day is only on Wednesday, and there are no other children in the building. If we run to a hybrid model, we may have to revisit that depending on the space and the needs of the number of children.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Erin, I'm sorry, I'm gonna pull you back. We're gonna end with you. I just wanted for folks that are still have questions about the high school piece, can we emphasize, is October 8th when we anticipate coming out of a hybrid model? Or is it, or into a, excuse me, out of distance learning and into a hybrid model? Or what is the expectation on what we will be communicating to our high school parents about the next steps?
Thank you. In the presentation, as you saw, is October 8th is a reevaluation day that we have declared and want to be as transparent as possible, that we are committed monthly to be looking at the data and communicating and reporting it back out to our families. However, it is our priority that we get students in person as soon as we possibly can, but in a safe way, in a thoughtful way, that we can operationally keep them safe, as well as instructionally provide them what they deserve and what Eastern Carver County is known for, which is personalized, excellent instruction. And so when we can do that, we're gonna get kids back into the building as soon as we possibly can. What I'm saying is on or before October 8th, and we will communicate with families as soon as we possibly can and when we know, and as well as we're monitoring the data.
Great. And then for our online learning academy, will it be that same exceptional personalized learning?
Yes, we are committed to that. Here's what I believe. Our teachers in District 112 are committed to that. And you are going, our online academy is going to get a District 112 teacher. And we are going to wrap our arms around them. Teaching and learning department is committed to being in those Google classrooms, providing extra professional development so that we can provide personalizing quality instruction for our online academy.
So we're gonna wrap it there. We're gonna pull those questions. Any last words from you, Assistant Superintendent Rathke, before we depart for the evening?
No, thank you so much for everybody for coming. We're really appreciative. I know that people still have lots of questions and we are committed to getting those answers. We appreciate that people came tonight to give us an opportunity to do more explaining and answering questions.
And Superintendent Sales Adams, any last words from you to our community? I think we're trying to get people unmuted.
Okay. Yes, Kaylee, thank you. Just to reiterate what Assistant Superintendent Rathke stated regarding the October 8th date, we are committed to getting our students back in person in a hybrid model, hopefully before that date. So just know that we're working very hard to make sure that we are prepared to offer all of our students a quality education as they start the year. So I know that you have a lot of questions. Some parents, just in full transparency, were not happy about going into a DL format. We want to make sure that we are ready and we're giving your students what they need. So please continue to reach out with any questions. Any points of clarification, or if you need feedback, we are here to serve you, to answer those questions. We want to make sure that you continue to have confidence in us, and please have a good evening.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight. I also want to apologize both for the late start and for the hiccup with Zoom. We will be getting that worked out. We're going to post this online as soon as possible, hopefully yet this evening, so that the parents who weren't able to come in and listen have a chance to have access to the same information that those of us who were able to get on the Zoom call did. Again, we're pulling all of these great questions, the questions that were submitted online beforehand, we're pulling those too. So we will be getting more answers to folks. We thank you for your time and your attention and your support of Eastern Carver County Schools. And we look forward to welcoming you back on September 8th. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good evening.